the things that worked kept them in the room. The things that didn't work, they would get up and walk out. And they were my second and very excellent teachers, because I found what would interest them. And I began to discover, I don't know what worked for me, different styles, different ways of working with teenagers that was, I don't know, I guess helpful to them, but also more appealing to them as a process. And so I just started writing about it. I just thought, you know, so much of what I saw that was out there written about working with teenagers was very formal, was very clinical, was very, I don't know, very structured. And I just thought, my God, if I was a kid, like, I'd want nothing to do with that.
What was some of the things you noticed that helped you a lot working with teenagers?
Well, okay, so one of the things is that I think it's really important to recognize that a lot of them never asked for our help in the first place. Okay, so these are kids that are being sent in by parents, teachers, guidance counselors, or probation officers, whoever. And I think in our attempt to sort of sweep that away and embark on a conversation where we're going to pretend that they do want to be here, already the therapist loses a lot of credibility, because the kid is thinking, you're talking to me as if I want to be here, and I don't. And I don't think that has to be a big deal or a big conversation, but I do think it has to be honored. And it could even be honored non-verbally. It's just an acknowledgement that you're here because you have to be, and that's okay, and we can have a conversation anyway. But that's not a deal breaker for me. But, you know, to pretend that a kid is interested in, quote, treatment is, you know, you're already saying that you're missing the message, because the message on the kid's face is, I'm not sure about this, and I'm not sure about you. And I'm not sure you can really even help me. And this therapy stuff is a crock. And so that's, you know, that's where you start. Not that you buy into that, but an acknowledgement that that's where they're coming from. Okay. So
let me ask you this question, because I think that you probably had this question asked to you about 1,000 times. How do you break the ice initially? I mean, do you start playing video games with them? I mean, what do you do to break the ice with these people?
Okay, so that's a great question. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the fallacy is that there's an ice to be broken. Okay. Yeah. And that's the assumption, is that we're kind of on opposite sides here, or that we don't have a common language, or that we have to work really hard to put together some contrived communication. I don't think that's true. I think a lot of adults just don't or aren't comfortable talking to teenagers, because teenagers are very astute about our anxiety. So they see in our face that we're getting self-conscious or anxious, and then they sit back on it. And it's pleasurable for them, because this person who has control in this relationship is starting to feel uncomfortable. So then you see it on the kid's face, and then so they get more self-conscious, and then you start to think about what you're going to say. And so you've derailed from the natural ways that people start to communicate. And I think whenever any two people begin an exchange, and to the degree that it strays from natural patterns and rhythms of communication, both people are aware that this is kind of a weird conversation. And when you're aware it's a weird conversation, it's not going to work. So then, okay, so how do you have like a not weird conversation with kids? Well, the way you would with anybody else. I don't know why we talk differently to kids and teenagers than we do to other people. We don't, for some reason, we pummel teenagers, we pummel kids with questions, like 20 of them, and we expect this to be interesting or engaging. Nowhere else. I mean, you think about it. We don't do it with our family members. We don't do it with our peers. We don't do it with our colleagues. We don't start conversations by asking questions, and that will never jumpstart a conversation with a kid who isn't really sure they want to be in a conversation. So you do it the way you do with anybody. You do it by, first of all, becoming interesting enough as a person that the kid actually wants to talk to you. Okay, so that means you show up with your personality. I mean, I spent 5 years learning about being neutral, okay? It doesn't match my personality. I understand the reasons for it. And I understand about being judicious about boundaries and parameters and self-disclosure. But that being said, if you don't show up as a person in the relationship, how are you going to be interesting to talk to? So, it's just, I mean, I don't know, kids come here and I just start talking with them as if there's a familiarity. I mean, I'm here in my office. Some advantages I have are I'm here. It's a chapel. It's a converted chapel. It's a big room. I walk around. I have my pit bull here. She's always, kind of an easy thing to talk about. There's just all kinds of stuff here that tells people what I'm about. And so we just start talking. It's those awkward questions that really shut things down.
Let me ask you this question, and then I'll throw it to the audience to see if any of my students have any questions. Is it bad? Have you ever seen, or does it get other therapists in trouble to act contrived? In other words, hey, have you seen the latest movie? Or hey, I've seen this latest movie star. Do they kind of pick up on that pretty quickly and say you're trying to be cool, but you're not?
Well, yes, yes, they do pick up on that, but I don't think their thought is you're trying to be cool. I think their thought is you're trying to find a way to talk to me. And so already there's a departure from an authenticity. It's like, I think the kid would rather hear, I have no idea how to start a conversation with you. I'd really like to, but I'm not really sure what to say. Like that is more appealing, I think. And you could get more traction with that because at least the kid knows you're true to the experience in the moment. Because when you start pulling in, movies out of the blue or games or whatever, it just looks like you're trying hard to have a conversation. You don't know how to have one. You're better off just saying that. You're better off saying, for some reason, like everything I think of to say to you is like, I'm thinking, nah, it's not. I don't know why, but like, this just is, I don't know. Like, this is just different. We're having trouble or whatever. They can relate to that. Now, at the same time, I'll say sometimes, like I do talk about movies or I do talk about music with kids because I have genuinely strong interest in them. So it comes up as a part of the conversation about what I thought about this particular movie. And I'll be very, like enthusiastic about something, or I'll be like, oh my God, like nothing's ever made me cry about that movie. The other day, somebody was brought up Shawshank Redemption, which is like my favorite film.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and I was like, oh my God. And like, I didn't even know it was a book. And like, that's a real conversation. I mean, it didn't come up in a, like, I'm going to use that to jumpstart. It was organic, let's say, out of the exchange. So yeah, there's places for that. But the way that you brought up, it's a beautiful question because I do think kids pick up on it and they know we're struggling.
Let me see if the class has any questions so far. Anybody? Just processing and writing notes. Rose has a question. I don't know if you can hear her or not. If not, I'll relay the question. Go ahead.
So the wall seems a little more equal.
Can you hear that?
Cannot.
Okay.
So
Go
the
ahead.
wall seems a little more equal. Is there ever an issue where there's like power differential or
She's asking if there's ever been a time where there's a power differential between you and the adolescent.
No, because I don't. Okay, I'm going to say no, but I got to think about why I'm saying no. It never comes up. I don't get into control. Those things aren't important to me, and I don't value them in my relationships with people. So the dynamic, I don't think, or I'd like to believe, doesn't really exist. I'm not ever trying to get anybody to do anything. I'm not trying to get anybody to say anything. So with the kids that I see, it's very clear what I think they should be doing or thinking about, but I never say to them, you need to think about doing that, because it's not a very helpful statement, but everything about our conversation is moving them in that direction. It's just, there's nothing for them to push back against, like, no, I'm not going to do that. And if they do say I don't want to do that, I'll be like, okay, well, here's where it's going to bite you on the butt, but okay. I mean, there's no power problem because I'm not trying to make anything happen. And I think that is an important gesture of respect to the adolescent, that I'm not trying to strong arm them. I'm not trying to muscle any point across. I'm not trying to make anything happen. And I respect that they can say, you know what? I don't want this.
And that's something in your book you talk about. I'm looking right now at some of the stuff inside your book, and you talk about developing a relationship and the respect with the adolescent, which is quite important. I'm going to get a little bit more specific if we can. What kind of challenges have you had in regards to maybe adolescents with substance abuse, adolescents with child abuse, anything like that? Do those pose different challenges, or is it the same technique again, trying to develop a relationship and respect with the person?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm going to say it is the same. There's nothing I would change about my approach. There's nothing I would change about my relationships with my clients or the client's parents. There are logistical things that are different. It is more complicated because there are legal involvements, and there are reporting requirements, and then there's all kinds of stuff but as far as the personal relationships, that's the same. That's the same. And okay, like for instance, someone might say, my kid's using and he's going to come in and lie to you about everything. I'd be like, okay, then he comes in and lies. I mean, okay.
What are you going to do about it?
Right. And they'll say, well, how are you going to know what's really happening? And I'll say, well, maybe I won't. Maybe I won't. We'll figure it out. I mean, if this is important, if what happens in here becomes intriguing enough or important enough to the kid, then, and if they find me credible, then they'll use me as a way out of whatever pain they're in. And that's our conversation. That's where we go. But, I work with whatever I get. They don't have to tell me the truth. They don't have to do anything. They just have to show up.
Let me ask you this. Do you work with anything younger than teenagers? I mean, under 13?
Yeah, 4 years old and up.
Tell us a little bit about working with like a 7 or 8 year old. Is it really different? Do you use play therapy? Do you use Santray? What do you do?
No, I talk with them. I think we underestimate the ability of kids to talk with us. But, again, it's the same sort of thing. If we talk in a way where we're kind of like, oh God, it's hard to describe. It's like, it's almost a little patronizing. It's sort of like a tip of the head and looking up at the kid and asking a question about what's your favorite, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they're looking at you like, no, like, I'm not going there with you. But if you can get into, like, a kid might say, like, they look at an object on my coffee table, like I have things there, and they'll be like, what's that? And I'll be like, I have no idea. I bought it only because I like the color. And I've had it for 8 years and I still have no idea what it is. What do you think I should do with it? Like, that's a different conversation. And then we play, and then they'd be like, well, I don't know. And I'll say, well, I don't know, check it out. And so we're talking about that, but that's a conversation that moves, and then it goes into something else. And then I start saying, and then we get into the presenting issue. So I'm trying to think of how it happens. I'll say, okay, so tell me more about what your mom was saying tell me what happens at home. Well, what do you mean? I don't know, like with all that noise, like everyone's always so mad, like tell me, what about it? And then, so they start talking about it. So the conversation, I find, is easy, and it's a much more efficient therapy. You could spend sessions and sessions in Santray without really going places. And I think that, we don't have that luxury. And I think that therapy has been a little complacent about taking too long. And I think if we have better skills in communication and connection, we can actually make things happen. I have a lot happen in the first session. I hit the ground running, and there's stuff happening, and kids are talking, and families are talking, and, there's a lot happening. I don't wait. I feel like the responsibility is on me to find a way to make the conversation happen, and I try my hardest to do it, and kids respond, and then we're talking about things that parents thought they couldn't be talking about, but they will.
That's very good. We do have another question for you, Dr. Edgett. Let's see here.
Yeah.
So
excellent stuff.
What advice does she have for parents?
What advice do you have for parents working with resistant adolescents? What advice do you have for resistant adolescents?
So talking, I want to make sure I understand. The kid is resistant in the therapy or to the parents?
To the parent.
With the parent.
Defiant.
Defiant to the parent.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll mention, I just had an article that I just wrote in Psychotherapy Network about that, about a defiant 12-year-old and the parent and working. And the article is written about helping this parent go from a very controlling stance to being more empathic as a parent. Because I find a lot of defiance and a lot of anger and resentment on the part of kids is the result of a long-term building of invisible fractures between them and their parents, and being on the receiving end of a lot of really disrespectful treatment by parents that nobody really sees because it's very, very subtle. Now, when kids get disrespectful, it's really obvious because it's F you, it's in your face, and it's like, oh my God, the kid's being so disrespectful. But they don't see the parent who rolls their eyes when the kid talks about something serious, or the parent who knocks on the door and walks right in and doesn't consider the breach of privacy and respect, or a parent who plays a control battle or is sarcastic all the time. And so we have that dynamic. But okay, let me get back to the question more directly. I always see kids with their parents. So teenagers with their parents, everybody comes in, because I'm not going to sit here with, you send in a defiant kid to go see that therapist. It's like, how are we going to do anything with that? So I have everybody come in, and I say, come sit down, let's have a conversation. And the parent, I'll say, tell me how you described to Jimmy, like what we were going to do today. And the parent will say, well, blah, 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 problem. And I'll be, okay, listen, we'll circle back to that. Just tell me about you guys as a family. And so now I have everybody talking, and I find out about the dynamics and like what's easy, what's fun, what doesn't work. And the kid is coming forward and saying different things eventually. Usually it's the parents that start out. But it gives me an understanding of, why the kid might be defiant, or how the parents are really struggling. And I make it part of the conversation. Okay, so when he does this, what happens? Well, nothing. Well, what? Does he shut you down? Well, he does this. I say, okay, that's your cease and desist order that he's given you, and you're responding. And then I turn to the kid. So, what is it about that you're trying to get your parents to cease and desist? What is it you don't want them to do or say or know about you? That's the kind of conversation I want to have. It's like, everybody's talking about what, when you do this, what happens here, and what's the effect on this person. And oh my God, okay, I could see it because I'm feeling it right now. Like, I think you're giving me a cease and desist order. What is it you don't want me saying to your parents? It's all part of what I try and get to be said. So here's the other thing in relation to that question. I like to help parents hold their kids accountable for their choices. So that'll be part of it. And I'll say to the kid, listen, some of the stuff we talk about you may like because it might help you. Some of it you may not like, because I think it's really important that your parents are able to hold you accountable for the choices you make. And I could see that they haven't been so far, because you're really good at getting them to back off. Okay. And I don't think that's good for your relationship. I don't think it's good for you in the long run, but we'll get to that. And I'll say to the parents, let's us meet. Because I think I have some ways, I could see how he backs you off, and I want to help you be able to hold to that, while at the same time being compassionate about some of the struggles that he has. Because I think balancing compassion for their kid while also holding them accountable for the choices is a very hard line for parents to balance. And I think that therapists have those twin tasks. Therapists have that exact same task in therapy, where you are holding your client accountable for the choices he or she is making, while maintaining a relationship where you're compassionate and supporting them. I think probably the main problem with therapy with teenagers is that people try and connect through empathy only, and that will never work. It's not a good platform, and they're not able to do anything to hold the kid accountable, and then there's no therapy there. It's not, being nice isn't going to do it.
And it sounds like, if I'm right, you can tell me if it's fair to say, you seem to be a facilitator of communication between both of them.
Yes. You're
trying to make sure they both understand each other clearly, because a lot of times we hear one thing that's not exactly the way it's intended.
Right. And also to help, engender, some compassion, maybe for a kid who, has just been berating and beating down a parent, to a sense of where where you can acknowledge how the parent has annoyed or offended the kid, but at the same time, can they see that the parent may be limited in their ability to deal with certain things, and that I will help them do it differently, but can you see where there was some genuineness in their gesture to you? Like I'll try and get the kid to say, yeah, well, okay, yeah, I could see that, so that the parent knows that the kid can see them in that way. I may do it for a parent, I know your kid's been driving you crazy, but let me just see if there's a part of this that you can see how, it's gone to this or whatever, but engendering some, compassion or understanding, normalizing it, say, of course you do that. Who wouldn't do that? If that was, your circumstances, I'd do it too.
Let me ask around. Anybody other questions so far? Oh, we got another one. Yep.
Just the teenagers in session when they have like initial resistance. First, do you address it with them, and if so, how do you address resistance?
The question is, if you have a teenager that starts off with resistance with you as a therapist, do you address it or do you not?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like, okay, so let's say I'm sitting with somebody and, okay, let's say they've made a decision up front. I'm not talking to her, okay? They walk in, they sit down, I'm chatting about this and that, just nothing happening, okay? So, I'm like, so I'm stopping, I'm like, and you can kind of tell. And I might look at this kid and say, you know what? Okay, like I could be totally crazy, but you look to me like before you even got in the car to be driven over here, you had made the decision, there's no way I'm talking to that lady. You just have that look about you, okay? And then at that point, if it's true, the kid will kind of smirk in spite of himself. And I'll say, okay, all right, at least that helps me. Like, you still don't have to talk to me, but at least it explains why we're not talking. Okay, so like now we're already at a different place already, because he knows I'm not going to try and, make something up. I'm not going to try and pretend that what's happening isn't happening. And also I probably get a little bit of credibility for discerning what he's thinking without him having to have said it. But kids tell us, they communicate to us. And if we read it, we read the signs, and instead of reading what we want to read or what we hope is happening, or we think we can kind of, like finesse the session into a conversation by not acknowledging the resistance, it's not going to work. I think if you're not calling see, the difference is I'm saying this is what I recognize to be happening between us, but you don't have to do anything about it. And he doesn't, or she doesn't. She doesn't have to talk to me. I'm not going to say, so, anything that suggests that he or she owes me a conversation, because he doesn't. He owes me only common courtesy. That's it. And so when you take that pressure off, they don't feel that they're responding to your request to talk to them. They find you interesting enough that they actually want to talk to you, and then they start doing that.
It's fabulous advice. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know it's 5:20 over there. I'm sure you're trying to get home on a Friday night. Any more questions here at all so far?
That's great.
Okay, they're all loving it. Last question for you, Dr. Edgett. And I'm trying to record this, so hopefully everything works out. I haven't done that here yet. So if I record it, I'll put it up on YouTube if you like, and I'll send you the link later.
That'd be great. Sure.
So we'll promote it for sure. I guess it's a two-part question at the same time. Two-part question. Does culture or gender make a difference in the adolescent that you're interacting with?
I have not found gender to be an issue. I can't remember a case. I'm sure there's been some circumstances where it was, but generally not ever. I talk as easily with 17-year-old guys, 15-year-old guys, as I do with, 11-year-old girls, 13-year-old girls. It's about if you can connect. Is it just a genuine person? And again, I think adults have a hard time talking to kids because they don't know how to approach them. And so they approach them with questions. And then it's like, oh my God, you're worse than my parent. Like, let me out of here. So, you got to, present yourself as like, don't worry, I'm not going to pound you with a lot of questions. I'm going to be part of this conversation. I'm going to be part of this relationship. And that's a lot of advice I give to parents too. I'm like, you have to, you as a parent have to show up as more than just the parent who's there to take them someplace. You know, sometimes parents forget to bring their whole being, you know, like, what do your kids know about you? What do they know about what matters to you? I mean, every single one of my clients knows what matters to me, what doesn't matter to me, and not because we've had explicit communications, because they see how I react to certain things or how I react to what they say. They know who I am as a person. And parents, I feel that they sell themselves short in not bringing that forward. Oh, my kid doesn't want to know about my day at work. Well, yeah, if you're just going to go through like hour by hour, but if you tell them like what happened that moved you, or what happened where you felt like an idiot, and you know, kids want to know that you felt like an idiot. It's okay, and you don't always have to be the perfect role model. It's like let a kid know that you struggled with like an ethical situation with a friend, and you were like, wow, I really didn't know what to do, and I haven't had that situation in a long time, and it's just kind of, you know, wow, that was my day. And have your kid look at you like, oh, I'm not used to you talking like that, but that's great stuff.
That is
because
great
all of a
stuff.
sudden, the relationship.
Last question. Actually, this is my last question. I have to ask this question. The only reason we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, I want to get your insight on it. We've been seeing a lot of occurrences with teachers, 26, 27, 20-year-old female teachers sleeping with their 15, 16-year-old students.
Yeah.
Is that causing damage? Because when you look at Facebook, you look at a lot of the guys in the comments, and they're, oh, I wish that was my teacher. Oh, I wish my son had that teacher. But they're missing out on the big picture here, that the student is getting damaged. What kind of damage can that cause, that 15, 16-year-old?
It's all great in fantasy, but in real life, I mean, that is a serious problem. I mean, just in terms of, I mean, the boundary violation. I mean, you know, it's from so many angles. First of all, you know, kids will be like, oh yeah, cool for you, but after that dies down, a lot of people are really kind of freaked out about it. So it's not going to be a cool story to tell. And then there's shame about, you know, at first it's like, oh, a teacher picked me, blah, blah, blah. But there's shame about that you know, there's layers of this, okay? And then, you know, how you deal with, and then what happens, you go from a 26-year-old woman, you're 17, and your girlfriend's 16, your ex-girlfriend is 16, and you know, how do you navigate that transition from that relationship, which really wasn't about you probably, but was about some need on, you know, and when you start to recognize that, and it sort of shatters, and it's like, holy crap, like I was just totally used, you know? It's not good. It's never a good.
Great point. We're going to definitely have to bring you on the show next year to continue this conversation with adolescents. Where can we get more information about you, Dr. Edgett?
So probably the easiest is my website. It's janetedgett.com. And I have a lot of information on there. I have talks I've given. There's some video clips about working with teenagers, and about the therapist who's too nice. There's a video clip about that. So there's a bunch of stuff on there. That would be the best place. I also, people are welcome to, I have Facebook, and I can, probably easiest things for me to email that. I have a Facebook page where I post a lot of different things. Welcome to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and then I have my books in there. People could look through them on my website as well if they're interested.
You were fabulous. I'd love to bring you back. I think it'd be great. We'll get you a bigger audience on the show for sure. I'll keep in contact with you on email. Once I figure out how to edit this thing, I'll send it to you as well.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edgett. Let's give her a round of applause. That was great.
Thank you so much. So I really enjoy this a lot.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. You too. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.